happened recently made many of us reflect and think deeply about what it means to be Black and what it means to live in this community. This is our first community meeting amidst a grave pandemic, and I'm very grateful and thankful that we have come together as safely as we can because Black lives matter. Systemic anti-Black racism is deeply rooted in our institutions, in our administrative systems, in our communities. And although many of you have reached out to us to express your sympathy and your solidarity, which we do appreciate, we need, however, to be able to confront the root cause of anti-Black racism and indigenous racism and racism against people of color. To end racial oppression, we need to be able to sit together and to call out for systemic changes in our community, for systemic changes in our city, for systemic changes in our institutions, within the police department, in our neighborhoods, in our homes, on those family dinner tables that we sit on every day. Because nobody's born racist. It is not in your DNA, it's not in my DNA. It is something that is nurtured, encouraged, and fostered over and over again. I would like to welcome every one of you today to share in this share healing and reflection session. Would like to make it very informal to provide an opportunity for you to hear real voices, real Black voices from our community. I would like to acknowledge and appreciate the support that we have received so much along our path of striving to come to a place like this where we can talk together, from the leadership of Algoma University, from the mayor of Sault Ste. Marie, Mayor Christian Provenzano, from Algoma Community Foundation, from the local immigration partnership, from our area MP. And this morning I was told that we'll be privileged as well to have our guest to be with us here. I want to make sure that I reference him well. And our guest today, who is here with our MP Terry Sheen, is the chair of the Canadian Caucus for Black Parliamentarians, MP Greg Fargas. We do appreciate your presence with us here today, and I do appreciate the presence of each and everybody who has been able to log onto this Zoom meeting. I would like to take this session to invite Rimaz Abakar. She will be our moderator for the session. So welcome, Rimaz. And the rest of us, it will be a great moment, not of only reflection, but also a moment that you can chip in, reflect, talk, and help us through our healing journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I'm just gonna mute you here. Hi, everyone. My name is Rimaz Abakar, and I act as the Secretary of ACCANO. I'm going to be facilitating today's session, so I just want to go through some housekeeping points to make sure that I think we have about 100 people registered, and right now we have 61 people on the line. So to make this as smooth and as peaceful as possible, I have some ground rules for you all. So the first one is, if you need to speak, please raise your hand. It's under the participants, I believe, icon there that you can raise your hand and I'll be able to see. Once you have been given the opportunity to speak, please and raise your hand, put your hand down so I know that I've given you the opportunity to speak, or if you have changed your mind from speaking. Please mute yourself once you have stopped speaking. I'll try to keep up with muting people as I can. And I would also ask that please keep your reflections or comments to 90 seconds to 2 minutes, just so we can get to hear from as many people as possible. I also want to let everybody know that as much as we appreciate you being here, and we would love to hear the support or your own reflection as what's happening, I am going to give preference to the ACCANO members to speak, and simply to, this is our first ACCANO reflection session, and there is a lot of healing and a lot of dialogue that needs to take place within the Black community first. And so I want to hear from the community, but we'll try to hear as much as we can from everybody, from our community first, and would allow others to speak. The way I envision this session will go is that there are some people that I would love to hear from in our Black community that I will ask them to speak, but also if you feel moved by someone's reflection or by story or something that you want to add to, please put your hand up, and I'll do my best to give everybody the opportunity to speak. With that being said, I also want to say this could be a very heavy topic with a lot of triggers. I certainly have been already triggered. And if you have been around me anywhere, you know that I am, as much as I can be, a very strong person. There are certain things that really hit my core hard. So I already apologize if I begin to cry at some point. I'll try to mute myself and remove the video as well, but this is where we are. So the other thing I want to say, I'm going to try my best to keep an eye out to the chat, but I can't promise that I'll be able to type back, because I want to benefit from this session as well. And I also acting as a facilitator, so please appreciate that. With that being said, I will open it up to the floor, and I would love to see hands being raised up. And I'm going to mute myself, and I'll mute as people have the opportunity to speak. Thank you, Greg. I don't feel ashamed of my tears at all. On the contrary, but it makes a lot of people uncomfortable seeing, especially a woman cry. So, and that's a conversation for another time. I'm having some technical difficulties here, so I'll appreciate your patience. Okay, let me just get here. Can Pauline, are you in the line?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to speak?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Pauline Dankwa. I studied at ACCANO University.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Pauline. I think I muted you by mistake.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yep, I've studied at ACCANO U for 4 years. I did a double major in law and justice and political science. I was also highly involved with the university. I was the student union president, the first Black female student union president here, and the vice president as well. And I was able to find ACCANO as well as a great support to me during my 4 years here. Jane, Rimaz, Dave, those are my top 3 go-tos for everything that I've been through in the STU, and for advice and anything that I ever needed. I might cry today, so bear with me too. But it was very hard for me to come here today. I actually wasn't going to come on this call, And it was Dr. Banji actually who encouraged me to speak. I've gone through a lot during these past few weeks. And, you know, everybody knows I'm very vocal and that I speak out when things are not going well to our people or any other nation or anyone. And, you know, I had a really hard conversation with someone yesterday that made me not want to come and speak today. But I think this is the reason why we're having this conversation here, for those who may have gone through the same thing as me. There's been a lot of people who are non-Black, you know, that will just come to me to try and get validation for the reason why George Floyd's murder was justified. And I had a lot of people always saying, well, it's not only about his death, but what about the riots and the looting? What do you think about that? And those are the type of conversations I'm getting from people that are not Black. They don't even care about our lives. They don't care when we die. And they just treat us like we're nothing. And these are the type of conversations, very hard conversations that I'm trying to, you know, get away from, but at the same time, I can't. Because these people were supposed to be either my friends or really good co-workers. And it's not until now that I'm starting to see people very differently. And it's been hard. It's been very, very hard. So I just wanted to come and voice out about how it's really important that if you're an ally, be real. And don't be an ally because you want to look good in the face of Black people. Honestly, it's not cool. This is our lives. This is how I was born. This is the color of my skin. And as soon as I was born into this world, I already had people faulting, you know, making faults for me, thinking that I wouldn't progress through the education system. People already look at me like I can't get anywhere in life. You know, my parents are immigrants here. They were not born and raised here like me. And they had to teach me about their struggles through this country so that I don't go through the same thing. They tried their best, and I think they did a really good job in raising me to not define people by the color of their skin, but by the heart. And that's how I've been raised, and that's how I look at every single human being in this world. And it saddens me and pains me that we're in 2020 and we still can't go to school feeling safe, or going to work, or the mall, going to get an ice cream or anything because of the color of our skin. This is how I feel every single day that I leave my house. Now I feel I have to always watch my back. I feel for my brothers and my uncles, my father, my nephews, my nieces. All of us are on, all of us have to always be looking. These cases that are happening are real. And I want people to stop saying that we are always trying to cry out the victim, because it's not true. This is what is happening. It's not a joke. And a lot of people, you know, want to always cry out that we're the victim. It's not that serious. He was just a bad cop. He would have done that to anyone. I don't think that's true. I don't think he would have done that to a white man. I really don't. And these are the type of hard conversations to have between your peers, your co-workers, presidents of universities, or workers, or corporations. These are the very hard discussions that we cannot have because of people's feelings. Well, this is how I live every day. Maybe you don't have to go through that, but this is how we live. This is how people who identify as Black live. Those who are mixed, who are white and Black mixed, Indigenous and Black mixed, Indian and Black mixed, they will always be pointed out because of their Black counterpart, not because of the other. So they go through the very same fears and issues like us. And it's not fair to them either. And our mixed families and our mixed brothers and sisters are going through the exact same cases. Why is it that our Black skin has so much of a negative, counterpart on us? Why can't we just walk through the halls of school feeling safe, or knowing, or not having anybody tell us that, you can only make it through the sports education area, or dance, or the arts? But we are very smart people, we are very creative, and we are very unique people. We are proud of who we are, and Black lives do matter. All lives matter, yes, but right now we're speaking about us, because we're the ones that are being attacked. We're the ones that are dying from day to day. And I just want to thank Dr. Banji actually for allowing me to speak, because I wasn't going to come and speak, because I knew that because of the pain that I've been going through. And every day that I say that I'm okay is because I want to be okay, so then I can speak and live a normal life like everyone else. But every single day I'm thinking about this. Every single day there's something new, So I don't want to keep too long, because there's a lot of people that also want to speak on here. But that's all that I wanted to say. And I love everybody here, and I thank you for coming to listen to us. And I hope that you will learn and be educated from the things that we say today. God bless everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. I think what gets to me is the complacency of our world. I still can't believe that there were 4 cops around when one of them had his knee for 8 minutes and some 30 some seconds, with a person under them screaming, "I can't breathe." Yet not even the one who tried didn't try enough, because we need to challenge the status quo. Dave Mornax, I appreciate your hand standing, but it's actually a virtual hand that you need to put up. But I see Jeanette has been putting her hand up for a long time. So I'm gonna give Jeanette her virtual hand up. I'm gonna give Jeanette the opportunity to speak, and right after you can just take it from there, okay? Thank you. Go ahead, Jeanette, unmute yourself and go ahead.
I wrote down what I had to say, because this has gotten very emotional for me. I've had long, intense conversations, and I've had amazing conversations with people that I haven't spoken to in years. And conversations with people who've always thought of me as the aggressive Black woman, because I always stood up for myself. And I always spoke my voice. And it's amazing to see how a man's murder on camera could change the way that people perceive me. Mama, mama. These were the last words that George Flyod uttered. Cries for his deceased mother. He cried the way that I cry for my deceased mother when I'm stressed, when I'm scared. He cries the same way that my kids cry for me, when they're tired, when they're afraid, when they feel pain. And before you say that this doesn't happen here, that's the United States. When it happens in the most powerful country in the world, it sends a very distinct message that this could happen anywhere. And before I give you an MLK quote that I usually do for all of my friends, where it's injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, I'll tell you a little story about myself. I have a friend that I consider one of the most amazing people that I know, because she's raw, she's honest, and she's real. When I first met her, I walked into a room and her mouth dropped. I walked over to her and I pushed her jaw up, and I said a saying that we say in my country that she's never heard before. I said, "Close your mouth, you're catching flies." She looked at me puzzled, and she said, "What?" And we started laughing. And I said, "You're staring at me." And she said, "I'd never seen a Black person in person up close before." And when she said that, that was the most honest thing I'd heard in a long time. And she, to this day, is one of my closest friends, because she's the only one of many of my friends, but a handful, that have ever asked me about my life, about racism that I face. and about the experiences that I faced not only in the United States, but also in Canada and around the world. I remember one instance where we were talking about subtle racism. And I asked her when we'd got out, I said, I'm going to keep my head down and I won't look, but I want you to open your eyes and look. I want you to see the looks of the faces that are looking back at me with fear and disgust. And I remember I was walking to Shoppers in the Cambrian Mall, and with my head down, all I heard was this loud, angry yell. What are you looking at? You have a problem? She had finally seen for the first time what I saw for a very long time, and that I see every single day. And she was finally angry. She defended me. And when I lived in Sudbury just the year before, a white man screamed in my face on a bus, and he called me an effing N-word to my face with spit on my cheek from his venomous yell of hatred. No one said a word. They sat there and stared. The bus driver didn't stop. No one looked. But now, finally, I had a white voice seeing what was happening and yelling and defending me in a booming voice. And I know she's probably watching because I invited her, so I want to tell her how much I still love her. A lot of us saw a Black man murdered for $20. $20 that we spend more on at McDonald's to eat. When you look at the countless others that have died before him, you are looking blindly and obliviously to us losing our lives. It took a pandemic to mute the sounds of your life for you to finally hear our cries. And we've been crying out for help for a long time. This isn't just about police brutality. This is about the countless calls of police on innocent Black people just wanting to live their lives, just to get Skittles and a Snapple, to barbecue, to watch TV at home, to go on vacation to an Airbnb, to sell water as kids for extra cash, to go jogging, and to birdwatch. In this city, you beautify the word. You try to soften it up. You call it a click. When I started my businesses, I was asked, why do you think you're going to be successful in this city? You're not Italian. And my response was, I didn't come here to be Italian, clearly. And when I was successful years later, I got that surprise, you're still here? I guess if she can make it here, anyone can. This told me that you knew your racism. You knew your discrimination. You participated in it, but you rephrased it by calling it a click. And it's time to call it out for what it really is, racism and discrimination. To my white friends and my counterparts, I need you to finally hear us. My passion and anger not only comes from the amazing melanin that courses through my veins, this comes because when you get to teach your kids about your culture, although I too, I also have to teach them about hate. I have to teach them that the world isn't safe for them as it is for their friends. I have to tell them that the world they live in won't protect them. I have to tell them that you can be whatever you want to be, but you can't go wherever you want to go. Imagine having to warn your kids and they have to warn their kids, like my parents warned me and their parents warned them. Imagine passing that down generation after generation after generation. Tell me how you would feel to look your kids in the eyes and explain to them why people hate them. I had to warn my son because at school, someone told him he couldn't do what he wanted to do because he was brown. I have to warn my kids that they can't wear hoodies at night and go to a store to buy candy because people might look at them as criminals and kill them. I can't tell my kids that they have to stop, they can't stop in a neighborhood to ask, for directions because somebody's going to kill them. I can't tell them that if they get pulled over by the police, that they should find a light, keep their hands on the steering wheel, lower your voice, don't look directly in their eyes, because any sudden movements could get you killed. When you get to celebrate sending your kids out into the world with happiness, I have to look and celebrate them, but with fear. All Black people have a common thread that unites us around the world, and it's racism. So don't talk to me about all lives matter when Black people don't. Don't talk to me about looting, because that's not the face of the movement. Don't talk to me about looting when there's a small amount of looters in a big, large global protest. Don't talk to me about looting when a life was looted for $20. Don't talk to me about looting when Trayvon Martin was murdered for Skittles and a Snapple, when Ahmaud Arbery was murdered for a construction site, when Sandra Bland was murdered for a vehicle signal light, when Eric Gardner was murdered over single cigarettes, when Jordan Baker was murdered for black hoodie, when Carlos Alcas was murdered for cell phone, when George Flyod was murdered over subway fares. And the list goes on and on and on. I'm tired of saying Black Lives Matter. We shouldn't have to, but we do. I don't want to talk about looting, because looting is a symptom of a larger disease that is hatred, racism, and discrimination. So instead of looking at looting, try to look at the bigger disease, hatred. Because if you cure the disease, then you won't have looting. Black Lives Matter. And that might just be a hashtag to you, but this is my real life, my everyday life. When this news story disappears and everyone goes back to their everyday lives, I won't have to, and I won't be able to. I still have to train my kids to survive in a world that won't allow them to. So this isn't just a news story for me. This is my everyday life. So I hope that you remember that Black Lives Matter tomorrow and the day after. I'm done.
Thank you, Jeanette. Dave, it's yours. Please, let's remember to keep it between 2 minutes so we allow others to voice themselves as well. It's yours, Dave.
I can't breathe. Think about that. I'm not surprised about this new case in the United States. When you look at the history of the United States, and actually most European countries, it's built on violence. There are in the United States policies of racism. So I'm not surprised, because today they still don't see and recognize Black people as human beings. And in our sociological study, we learned that, and there's enough research out there to prove that point. Because in order for you to consistently commit that level of violence, the mind have to turn that person into an object. So that's why I'm not surprised. Again, if you look at the history of the United States, it is built on racism. Dr. Omali Yesatala did an Oxford Union debate in December 2018. And his debate was about closer African Union unity. And he explained in that presentation that there is more people imprisoned in the United States than the population of certain countries. I can't breathe when I think about that. He specifically named Deborah and I can't pronounce it, New Guinea. Anyway, do you know what the population of New Guinea is? I just researched it because I had to check it out. It's 900 and something thousand people. So think about that in the context of where we are. Actually, there's also discussion out there that there are more people in prison in the more Black people in prison in the United States today than was in slavery. I can't breathe when I think about that. So it's not surprising to me. And it's also absolutely evident. We have to call it for what it is. It's not pointing the finger at a cop or at an individual. It is policies, and it is systematically structured within governments, corporations, and societies. If we look at Sault Ste. Marie, we see it in the hiring practice in Sault Ste. Marie. So it is a policy. I don't want to even spend the time talking about my own painful experience in Sault Ste. Marie and my kids who are biracial or multiracial that come from different ethnics, and the challenge that they have navigating their life within this community. It is too painful. I can't breathe. So I'm going to make it very simple. So what do? I'm excited that we are having this conversation, and it's a spark. I'm grateful for the people that reach out, but it's not enough. I'm sick of talking. I'm sick of telling my story. It's not enough. It's not good enough. So what do? Brother Malcolm X said quite a few years ago, a man who stands for nothing will fall for anything. Your condolence and prayers are not enough. It doesn't move the needle. We as a people are too far behind. Too far behind. So don't give me your condolences. They mean nothing. It changes nothing. What we know for sure is that racism is a social conditioning, whether you are aware of it or not. We know that for sure. So how do we go about tackling it? We can't wait until there's an incident like this, because normally what will happen when an incident like this, we get excited, we have these conversations, and then it disappears. So what my recommendation is, because we have to kind of grab this by the root and deal with it as a people. Because I think for me, I believe one of the reasons we haven't made any drastic change when it comes to racial relations in most societies is because we continue to blame people instead of looking at the policies and the systematic structures that are built into governments and corporations that keep them in place. So here is my recommendation. This dialogue, we have to continue this dialogue. This dialogue has to be sustained community, nationally, and globally. It has to be a commitment from our leaders, and I'm glad that we have some leaders today. So don't just show up and then sympathize with me, and then you go back to your regular place of doing nothing. It means nothing to me. So until we are able to get together, dialogue this from a daily commitment, keep it sustained until we come together and have some solution, because we know it is a systematic, structural issue. And the thing with most people, some people don't even realize that they are racist because the social conditioning is so good. I can't breathe. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. I would like to pass it on to Curtis Obadan right now. Go ahead, Dr. Obadan. Go, Curtis.
Good afternoon,
You're muted.
everyone. Yeah, I think I just unmute myself. Good afternoon, everyone. I think this is the first time or the second time I've actually discussed this with anybody. Not because I didn't want to, but it's been a very, very tough discussion for me to have. I want to take us through. I'm a physician. I work with the Surrey Hospital. The clinical director of the inpatient unit of the mental health department. I'm a Black man. I'm an African. I want to take us through what happened to George Floyd and how it impacted on me. Even being a physician who's seen people die, how this has been very troubling to the point that I've avoided having this discussion with anybody. I trained in Nigeria and I worked in one of the busiest hospitals in my town. And I watched people die helplessly. And it took its toll on me to the point that I decided to leave home because of the trauma of hearing wailing, people crying every day in the wards. It became the normal for some of my colleagues, but it wasn't normal for me. I had to leave because I was helpless as a physician, nothing to work with. When I watched George Floyd die, it reminded me of everything. I watched different stages as he went through the different stages before he passed away. He was struggling at first. He became confused. And when that happens as a physician, you know you're losing the person. You're definitely losing that person. Then he went unconscious. That triggered something for me quickly. As a physician, at that point, I'm asked to do something, which is a CPR to resuscitate this person and bring them back to life if it's a medical event. But I watched every stage until he passed away, and there was nothing he could do about it. I'm still having goosebumps as I speak about it, because this is the first time I'm actually been able to put my emotions into words. It is tough. And I watched the different ways people could have helped him, and nobody could. I'll start with the people who were standby. They couldn't do anything because they were afraid. I told my wife I would have taken a bullet for him on that day because I knew he was going to die. There was no doubt about it. And people stood by because the system have suppressed them so much that they could not do anything. All they were doing was shouting, "He can't breathe! He can't breathe! Get off him! Get off him!" And nobody could. Nobody helped him. And I saw a policeman with his hands in his pocket. 3 times he pressed on that man's neck. If you watch the video I did, watched it once, twice, 3 times. I wish I could have taken a bullet for that man that day. I would have. From where I'm from, the country I'm from, I would have taken a bullet for him. But I watched helplessly, and it's traumatized me greatly to the point that this is the first time I'm actually have to talk about it. I'm a physician. I've seen people pass away, but I haven't talked about it with anyone. He put his hand in his pocket. He went unconscious. He did nothing. The paramedics came. He had his hands in a handcuff. They threw him on the trolley, checked his pulse, did nothing. He meant nothing to no one. I would have started CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, to help him. Nobody did. If he didn't do CPR in the open, why would he do one in the ambulance? He didn't. So basically, he was programmed to die for a fake $20 note. It's tough. Let us let that sink in. 3 different levels that his man could have been helped, but the system has made it possible for a white racist police to be so confident to do that in public. Tell me what he would do when there's no one there. At nighttime, pulling a black man over on the road, what he would have done, and what he had done in the past to people of color. It is tough.
Curtis, I can't hear you. We lost your audio for a second after it stopped.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. My worry is, like Dave said, like Pauline said, like Rima said, we're going to have this discussion. And is this going to be all that we're going to do? Posterity is going to judge us if we walk away from all of this by having just discussions only. Because it is tough being a black man. We always swim against the tide, always. I know people saying, well, yeah, they're blacks and they're looting. We cannot associate both. This has been going on for 400 years. It's time we take a stand. Take a stand against what has been happening to a particular race. We're intelligent, we're hardworking, we are no leeches. We just want to be treated equally. I worry about my generation, but I worry about the generation after me. I'm a father of 3 kids. They're all colored. Recently, my son came back from school and asked me, Dad, why am I brown? I almost fell off my chair. Where did that come from? Who told you you're brown? It turned out that his teacher in school made him realize that he was different. So we cannot sit here and say it's not happening in Sault Ste. Marie. It is. I have not witnessed it because of my position. I'm in a position of authority right now. But I left Ireland. I worked in Ireland for 10 years. I left the Republic of Ireland because of the amount of racism that I faced as a black man. I was called names. Told to go back to where I came from, even when I was providing services to people. We cannot sit here and have this discussion and go home. I want to summarize before I leave. Thanks for giving me more time to talk about this. If this could hurt me, having seen a lot of people pass away in my practice, I imagine how much hurt my black community is going through right now. Discussions will not solve this. We have to act. I want to ask a very tough question. In our situation today, let's look at our community and our council in Sault Ste. Marie. How many people of color do we have in positions in our council today? We cannot sit here and say it's not happening. It is happening here. I am angry, but I know being angry is not going to solve it. We need to take a stand as a community. We need to take a stand as a people that every life matters and the black life matters a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Obadan. I'm still having a very hard time articulating how I feel or breaking down what's happening. So I understand. Gilbert, mic is yours, and after that, Dr. Olabanji will go. Go ahead, Gilbert.
Hi, thank you, Remas. Can you hear me? Okay, well, thank you for joining this important discussion. My name is Gilbert Otime. When I was first asked to join this webinar, I didn't know if I was ready to talk about my feelings or how I felt. As you know, the event from the past few days has been so hard to comprehend, and it's very sad in 2020, we as people of color still see inferior. Our lives are worth nothing, even though we have helped build great nations. The prejudice, the discrimination, the antagonism against my kind, when will it end? I'm tired of seeing my kind harassed, brutalized, killed just because of the color of our skin. I'm tired of the systematic oppression. When will it end? I would like to use this opportunity to share a story with you, an unfortunate experience, which due to the past events of today has brought back memories. 10 years ago, in this very beautiful city of Sault Ste. Marie, my twin brother and a colleague decided to go for lunch to the freshly skills outlet in Station Mall. It was a beautiful day, everything was going normal, but my brother and his colleague purchased a strawberry banana smoothie to cool off and kill the 1 hour lunch break. It felt like nothing could go wrong until they started their trip back to the university. Apparently at that time, the Sault Ste. Marie police were investigating and keeping an eye out for a shooting suspect who fled Toronto and was supposedly believed to be in Sault Ste. Marie and surrounding areas. Now you may be thinking, what has this got to do with my brother? Well, the suspect was Black. And since the Station Mall security were told to be on the lookout for a young older Black male, guess who fit that description? My twin. Now the action didn't happen at the mall. No, the story continues. As they began their trip back to the university, my brother's colleague noticed they were being followed by one police cruiser. And up to that point, where they made a turn into the university, then 5 police cruisers just appeared from nowhere and surrounded them. Put your hands out the window, they shouted. Switch the car off and throw the keys out, they yelled again. Now, from my brother's view, all he could see were heavily armed police officers in all directions pointing and screaming instructions. If you were in his shoes, would you be very, very confused? The entire time, my brother kept thinking if it was his time and the Lord has sent for him. The moment was traumatizing. He kept reflecting on the event for the past few hours. Did I forget to pay for the smoothie? What could I have done to trigger such a situation? An unknown dilemma. Their chances were just to best listen and ask questions later, as any mistaken move could have led to a story of death. They listened and obeyed. Both my brother and his colleague were apprehended and questioned. After further investigation at the scene, the officer realized that they had apprehended the wrong person. Now, folks, what will you call that? Clearly racial profiling, right? Now, come to think of it now, it would have been possible that every young Black adult in city of Sault Ste. Marie on that day became a suspect because after the whole incident, my twin brother called me to warn me to be careful, that the police were on the lookout for a young adult Black male. Since he fit that description and we are identical twins, then you know what could have happened. Even one of the officers made a joke and said, at least you have a good story to tell your kids. Good what? He should tell his kids that he was racially profiled, suspected for a crime that he didn't commit, traumatized from a situation that could have ended his life if the right decisions weren't made. No way. Yet this situation didn't stop him from achieving his goals. In his last year at Agoma University, he went on to become the president of the student union, the first person of color, the first international student to hold such a position, which he was proud to have held. Slowly but surely, the students born and raised in Sioux are beginning to understand how much we can offer. I constantly keep getting asked, what do you like about the zoo? What are you still doing here? Many have left the zoo for different career opportunities and other reasons. Many have left because they do not feel comfortable or accepted in the community. Just another quick story I'd like to share about a young queen born raised in Toronto who came to the zoo to pursue undergrad at ACCANO. I will not mention her name, but she was one of the kindest soul you ever meet. On a good day, she was walking downtown zoo and she had dirty water thrown from her from a moving vehicle near the sign Agoma Friendless City, followed by the common derogatory statement said to us, the aliens, go back to your country, they yelled from the vehicle. Hello, she's born and raised in Toronto. Now I'm confused. Is Toronto a country outside of Canada? My apologies, I left out an important part of the story. She was Black. These sad and unfortunate events do not only influence our city and what it means to us, but also prevent new immigrants from moving here. One thing we need to understand is that we're all descendants of immigrants. Our great nation and city was built on immigration. Only the natives lay claim to this land. This systematic oppression, racial discrimination, and all sorts of harassment exists in our schools, workplaces, neighborhood. Everywhere we go, as people of color, we experience some sort of form of discrimination. Then we decide to stand up to all these years of oppression. They say we are rioting. No, we're only demanding what is right because we no longer want to see our brothers and sisters of color die in the hands of those who took an oath to serve and protect us. Don't our life matter to you? We must work towards changing the attitudes of people. We must educate them about diversity and encourage them to embrace it. We must prevent others from experiencing incidences like the one my brother and the female student did. We must call out our friends, families, co-workers when they make derogatory statements against minority. We must fight ignorance with education. We must build a zero-tolerance system in our homes, schools, and workplaces. We must also influence positive change. We must build a stronger and safe community immune from any form of discrimination. And we must prevent a George Flyod situation from happening ever again. Thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert. Dr. Olabanji, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this forum, and it's a pleasure to also come here and share my experience and also to connect the dots. I'll try and keep it very simple. However, these are not simple issues that we can just go over. These are issues that cut very deep. I'm gonna structure my reflections to draw our attention to certain things so we don't get carried away in the whole, what they call, distractions that are beginning to emerge. And that distraction also includes this illusion that, oh, Canada is a different space, it's not as bad. We're not systematically racist as a society. In the past year alone, I have been able to at least continue to engage even before this new event of George Flyod, which I will come back to. So last year, this is where I'm going to begin because it strikes a chord. So last year, exactly June last year, to be precise, I was in the UK at the University of Oxford, and I gave a talk on the topic called The Politics of Race and the Social Construction of Black Africans in Canada. That was at the University of Oxford. And when I did my presentation, I told them, do you know that while we look at the United States and United Kingdom as places where the incarceration rates are high for Blacks, do we actually know that the Canadian federal prisons actually have more Black people in them compared to those other countries? In fact, if you double down and you go to the provincial prisons and you see the number of Black people in there, it's actually way higher than some of these other countries per capita. the number of Black children in the Toronto Children's Aid Services, 42% in foster care, even though Toronto has 8% Black population. 40% dropout rates. The unemployment rate among Blacks in Canada is the highest. And wait for it. It doesn't matter whether you're first generation, second generation, or third generation, the income of Blacks in Canada is the highest. In other words, the system is just rigged and it's systemically racist. And this is where I want to go with it, that when we begin to think about what do we do, how do we go, we need to begin to understand the word policing that makes all this thing possible. As a noun, the word police stands for public officers, officers for law enforcement and criminal investigation, things like that. But as a verb, to police means to maintain a structure, to maintain a system. And all I just said, whether it's the school, whether it's the hospital, including the issue of COVID, does it surprise anybody that COVID came and it's also clear that the people who are most vulnerable are also people of Black heritage? Now, when we begin to trace all these issues and go back to the fact that the word policing as a verb applies to different sectors, our responsibility, I think, would be to begin to point those issues out, to say, how am I being policed in the society? The law enforcement aspect is very visible. It's just one sector. How am I being policed as a Black person when I go into the store? I, as a person, when I go into the store, I don't put my hands in my pocket. I make sure it's visible. So wherever the camera is, it's already seeing that my hands are clean. I'm not putting anything in my pocket. Why? Because I have been asked, not once, not twice, what do you have in your hand? When I go to the gas station and I do self-service, and sometimes I drive up, I forget to take the receipt, what strikes my mind is, oh, I forgot the receipt. Not because I want to reconcile my account. You can always check off your statement to get that. But because I know that if all of a sudden a police car pulls up behind me and says, well, you have to stop because we got a call for somebody who did the gas and dash, I don't have evidence to show that, I paid for it. Now, when we go about our daily lives and this is what we experience, it comes back to the idea of policing and how aggressive the society has come to treat Black people. 16 times in 5 minutes, George Flyod repeated the word, I can't breathe. Please, I can't breathe. But the police officer didn't care. Now, I don't know what there are different videos out there, but I've watched these videos and I've watched what happened from the moment he came out of the store where he's alleged to have used a counterfeit drug. The police officers that first arrived on the scene, the two of them, you could tell, they actually drew the gun. Nobody, probably, a lot of people didn't see that piece. But there was a part in the beginning where the guns were drawn to respond to an alleged $20 counterfeit response. Of course, the officer, the main officer, he was actually one of those who came later. He didn't hide it, that he was going to make sure that this man knew your place in society. So when we talk about the Black experience, my emphasis to let's draw attention to the fact that not just in the United States, but in Canada, and I'm going to call some names. Maybe some people can relate, some people can identify with those, but I suspect a lot of people don't even know that these names within the past 10 years in Canada have been Black people killed by police. Does the name Andrew Loku sound familiar? Does the name Guillaume Registe sound familiar? Does the name DeAndre Campbell sound familiar? Does the name Orlando Brown sound familiar? I can go on. And of course, recently we have the case of Regis Kapinski Packet. We're still waiting for the full details of that. In Toronto, this is just something in May 2020. It's not some distant problem we face. On a daily basis, the lived experience of Black people in Canada, in United States, continues to be defined by this systemic anti-Black policing. And of course, let me say it, the problem we also face here is silence and indifference. In fact, one of my greatest problems with the issue of racism in this country is silencing. And I always say, unfortunately, when it comes to silencing the Black experience, including the fact that all the names I just mentioned, a lot of folks might not have heard before, is because Canada unfortunately takes the gold medal in silencing the Black experience in the Western Hemisphere. Now, in thinking of George Flyod and every other Black person who has died in the hands of police, I want us to remember that when we talk about systemic anti-Black racism, it extends to schools, extends to hospitals, extends to the criminal justice system, it extends to going to the store and the gas station. The issue is, if we see something, are we ready to say something? And that's my challenge going forward, and even as I continue to reflect and process this day. You see something, say something. The don't ask, don't tell method of defining and governing racism in Canada needs to stop. It needs to stop. I have been told, not by one or by two parents of Black people who say, you know, I had to go sit inside the class with my elementary school kid just to watch the way the teacher interacts with the kid, because I believe there's just so much prejudice that this child is experiencing. And the question to our white friends is, how many of you, or how many white people in Canada had their parents sit in this class with them just because the parents had to observe how the teacher was interacting with the child? And we complain, oh, the dropout rates are high. The dropout rates will be high because the kids are socialized into thinking that they don't belong there. This is not for you. You need to go and find something else to do. And of course, when the whole issue of the Afrocentric school in Toronto was brought up, you saw how much hate and racism came out. I don't want to take too much time this afternoon, but I hope that as we continue to heal and look for ways out of this particular quagmire we find ourselves, we should remember systemic anti-Black racism is policed beyond the law enforcement, even though the law enforcement, unfortunately, because they have the right to the license, or perhaps they are backed by law to use force, that's why we call them law enforcement, are people who we tend to focus on. They just one, albeit a very big one. But how our lives are policed on a daily basis is something we should begin to consider. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to more interaction. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Olabanji. In all of this, what strikes me is silence, is the inability of people to stand up for what's just and what's right. And I think it triggers me personally because it was in a situation before in Ottawa. I was peacefully sitting in the bus. I actually was just coming from a fundraising for Special Olympics that I had stayed all night baking for and making cookies and cupcakes. And I was hustling my professors and colleagues to buy like $5 cookies, right? To raise for the Special Olympics. And on the bus, I was on the phone, very excited, telling my friend how everything was going so well. When I felt a hand, I was trying to grab my neck, and it was 4 o'clock in Ottawa, so it's a box of sardines. So I didn't mind. But then there was talking, and I was actually sitting on the chair that is closer to the window. So someone was immediately sitting next to me. Someone was reaching over them to grab my neck while screaming and calling me a racist. And with a bus that is full of people, so at least there's probably like at least 50 people on the bus. There is another human being that is sitting right next to me, and I'm surrounded by people who are sitting and standing, and not a single person said stop or this is not okay. Everybody minded their business. And this is the maple washing we talk about, that we hush and silence discrimination and racism in Canada. Not a single human being even said like, no one. So that person could have suffocated me to death. They could have hit me. They could have threw something at me, and no one would have moved the shoulder, would have moved the hand. So that's the thing that is disgusting about silence, because inaction itself is an action. And when there is injustice and there is wrongdoing, and you choose to not say, to not do anything, you're empowering that side that is doing, the aggressor. So keep that in mind. In everything in life you do, inaction in itself is an action. And oftentimes there aren't fine people on both sides. There is a wrong and there is a right. So that's what triggers me really hard about people not standing up for what's right in life. I don't see any hands up. I can be a school teacher and call on people. Thank you, Yahaya. You can go ahead. The mic is yours.
Thank you, Ramaz. Hello, everyone. I don't know where to start from. It's been a very emotional week for all of us. It's been touching. I've been exhausted. I've been emotional myself. And I feel personally one of the hardest things for us to do as Black people. And well, not for us to do, but the hardest thing is having to go through this racism and the challenge, and everyone is like, they think maybe saying sorry or just, saying I understand is enough. And like Rima said, silence is very, very painful, mainly when you're going through these things. And I'll give a short story that happened to me. My first year here in Ogama University, I was in a class and I was having an argument with a student here. And I knew the students fairly, but not deeply. And during the argument, it was just a shallow argument. The person takes out, he had his laptop and he typed starving African child on Google. And then he clicked on pictures. And then he pointed that at me and I started laughing. And he compared the starving African child to me. And the hardest part with all this thing is having to go through the racism, and know that we still have to love. And I don't know how to explain this. It hurts, it's annoying, it's painful, and it cannot be explained to be compared to a monkey, to be compared to an animal, but knowing that we have to look at them and still love them and tell them and call them out because we are humans and the racism is wrong, but having to love the person that's persecuting you and the person that's comparing you to a starving child, it's very painful. And I'm friends with the guy and I tell him, I'm like, hey, it's all cool. We talk right now. And I'm like, I still love you as a person. But when you're compared to that, the apology doesn't heal the wound that has been made when you're compared to a monkey. And when other people are silent when this thing is happening, it makes it worse because you're not doing anything. It's like just looking, and it continues, and people continue with this insult and the racism. And everyone thinks if you don't get involved in it, you're trying to stay safe. But you're not thinking of the impact it's having on our lives. And just know that for the skin color, something we didn't pick, something we just show up and you have the skin color, you have to go through different challenges than everyone else. and you're being looked at different. I know I can't go to a grocery store and wear a hoodie because I'm going to be approached, and it's happened. And in that same grocery store, there was someone wearing a hoodie. It was white, but he wasn't approached. And as a young man and my young friends, and knowing that we have dreams, but knowing the system doesn't even respect anything you do, even in terms of accomplishments, because you can just be going out jogging and someone comes and shoots you. You don't, I like going out jogging. And even lately, I went to the park 2 days ago, and I went to kind of distress from everything that's been happening. And I started regretting why I went to the park. Because everybody is looking at you, and everyone is staring at me. And with everything that's happening in the world, all the eyes are even more fixed at me. And so I can't even skate or do anything in peace. And I don't know what is behind their thoughts. I don't know what anyone is thinking. And it's a rough time, and I don't know how to explain to anyone. And I've never felt this way before. And I'm just going to cut it up. Yeah.
Thank you, Yahayo. Marlene Henry, please. The floor is yours.
Wow, thank you for the opportunity to share. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yes,
yeah.
We can.
As I am listening to everybody's lament, it's a time for lament and reflection. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to have a Zoom meeting with pastors from across Canada, and Charles McVitie, who was president of Canada Christian College, charged for those of white folks on this line who's listening, those in authority, those in influence, affluence, supporters listening in. He said, it's time to step up and stand up, because the axis of evil and injustice will only prevail when good people do nothing. And when I saw George Floyd's death just unfold in front of me, it brought some triggers to me, and I've been lamenting since. As a minister of the gospel of Jesus, a chaplain, community chaplain, president of Helping Hands International, which is an organization that uses information, awareness, education, and facilitation to stand up or advocate for marginalized communities in Toronto and across Canada. I was praying 2 days ago, and I thought I would post it on Facebook, but the Holy Spirit says, no, you wait for a forum. And thank you, Jane, for inviting me. Because coming into Sault Ste. Marie, I'm what you call a transfer student. Having taken the advantage from Seneca College to Algoma U with the transfer degree program in community development. And I stayed, this was from 2014. And I'm going to share with you an incident that happened that we are challenged now to take it from the top tier of what systemic racism looks like to our own platform and our own individual experience. And I'm challenging us now to think, those that are listening in, of the act of microaggression and selective incivility that we of color face within our different disciplines. And this happened to me when I was employed at, my personal experience as I reflect, and I'm putting it out there, as I was employed at a prominent residential home here in Sault Ste. Marie as the social service worker. And I was often cited for being, and quote, I saw that in the narrative, pushy and forward as I seek to, or attempt to advocate for the residents of that home with equitable treatment for all residents, including in the indigenous residents that were in the home. And things escalated to the point where I felt marginalized and labeled. The final straw was we got the report from the director that in support of the recommendation from the residential council that they wanted the presence of the care team to be on the floors, to a presence so residents don't feel isolated and marginalized. So she suggested that we host the meetings, the care plan meetings on the floors, and everybody seemed to agree with that. For one particular staff member did not sit well with her. So she started to complain, and there was a chain feedback email with other recommendations of how to facilitate it so it's equitable. So I piped in, I put in my 2 cents worth and a positive spin that, and I made that recommendation. And as I left my office, because my office is the first one you would see when you come into that particular home, I left the office and was going down to this young lady's office, that staff member. I heard her verbatimly mocking what I said in my email, reiterating it verbatim, line by line. So I know it was my comment she was saying. And at the end of it, she said something to the effect, she said it, actually said, I still hear it in my ears. If I could see that B person right now, I would slap her in the face. I heard it. I heard it. And I never told a soul. I came home and, no, I did tell, I confronted her then, and I said, I didn't know we had to resort to violence to get our way. And she didn't answer. I guess she was so surprised that I heard. She couldn't refute it. I immediately reported it to the director, and she was called into the office because I saw her passing by the office. She looked subdued after, but nothing was done. Nothing was done, no report was to me. After that, the environment just changed for me. Getting up to go to work was traumatic. Anxiety took me over. The job that I loved became disdainful to me. As a result, care plan meetings did not feel the same. And I further felt isolated and marginalized within the working environment. And I didn't hear anything, and I took the executive decision, and 2 weeks after, I resigned. And somehow I thought I got over it, because I moved on to working at another place that was inclusive. And I want to give a shout out to the soup kitchen, Ron, fantastic person to work with. He understands and understood, and I had a good working relationship until I left. But I challenge us here today, those who are listening, microaggression it's called. And if we look that up, and I want Remas, you are the facilitator. Could you just educate us before we leave? Because Jane, a couple of our or presenters are asking, what do we do? Education, awareness, education, information has to challenge us. We cannot go back the same. I want you to look up, Remas, on what is selective incivility and microaggression. So everybody, it's not my words, but I have it here, but it would be nice for you to tell us what it is, or give us a preview of that, a report on, so we can know. So my challenge is, as we reflect, and as I reflect, is we need forums to lament. We need forums to speak. We need from the system, not systemic, but the system, as Dave says, that underpins racism, discrimination, and we call it little names, and we need to call it out, speak up, and those with voices, speak up. Because if you don't, you're abating and betting the system. You are supporting it with your silence, and I really thought I got over it, but I didn't. I haven't. So I had to cry really seriously. I am. But thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak, and I leave it to the others to take it up from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Marlene. Without having to look it up, I could probably guess what selective incivility means. And
Okay,
as many people have
I could tell you.
Marlene, oh, go ahead.
All right, here it is. We'll start with microaggression. Let's start with microaggression. It's a term used for brief or commonplace daily verbal behavior or environment indignities, wherever intentional or unintentional, that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative prejudice, slight, or insult towards any group, particularly culturally marginalized group. The term was coined by psychiatrist and Harvard University professor Chester M. Pierce in 1970. And selective incivility could be, it says, the definition, a mechanism that perpetuates gender and racial disparities in organization, especially purported in many organizations where women and people of color encounter more uncivil treatment than men and whites.
Thank you, Marlene.
You're welcome.
Thank you, my dear. I see there is iPhone AV with their hand up. The mic is yours. Please introduce yourself so we know who we're listening to. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. iPhone AV is me. It's Ozma Vezina. I'm the president of Algoma University. I should put my name on there for that. I don't want to take a lot of time because I think it's really important that in this forum we hear the stories that are coming out in an effort to understand the impact of the racism that we're seeing in our community and across North America and the world on people. And so personally, I've had my own interactions with racism from when I was a little girl right through my entire life, actually. But this is not about my story. I just want you to understand that I come from a place where I have experienced racism up to the point where my parents actually considered changing my name because it was a very, it was probably where a lot of it was stemming from, because people knew that I was coming from a different nationality. And but I do wonder as I listen to these stories and I hear the important emphasis today being placed on continuing the conversation, finding safe places to have these conversations. And I want to thank ACCANO for setting this up today. I think we need to keep the conversation going in our community. I think people are ready for this conversation. It's the first time since I've lived here, and I've lived in this community most of my life, that there is such a strong commitment from the people that have experienced this to come together and keep that conversation going and to actually find the action forward. So
sorry to interrupt you, but I'm hearing music in the background. Is it just me or it's on your side as well?
I'm not hearing music, but
okay, then it's just me. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So I guess I wonder about the role that Algoma University could play in keeping the conversation going, and you know, in terms of helping to facilitate. And you know, you've heard today that there are many employees, students, faculty of the university that want to have this conversation. And I think my commitment today is that we will, you know, help to facilitate and to keep the action moving forward in our community. And again, thank you very much. I guess if I can as well, just talk a little bit about the history of Algoma. And the only reason I'm going to bring this up is because if people know the history of Algoma, the original intent of that site was to be a place of cross-cultural learning and teaching. And it was meant to, as Chief Shingwak articulated, be a teaching wigwam where people from around the world would learn from and with each other. And I think there's a time and place now in its history that it's meant to do this work. And so I leave that with people, that if the university can be a leader in helping this community face some of these challenges, I think there are a tremendous wealth of people that are ready to do this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Asima. I just want to follow up here. I know that from personal lived experiences of students at Algoma U and Sioux College who have experienced microaggression like it's no one's business and experienced systemic discrimination and racism on an ongoing basis. So I think my recommendation would be to the university is to what ACCANO had already sought out before in our statement that we put out, is to reevaluate those systemic practices that propagate racism and really take a deep inward look at the experiences and the voices of those students. And I see someone here commented about anti-retaliation policies for those who come up with discrimination or racism complaints. So this is all good food for thought for someone who wants to enact change, genuine change to look at, I think, anyways. And I see here there is Just Winder. I hope I'm not butchering the name, that have their hand up. The floor is yours. And please, let's be mindful of the time because we want to take time to have kind of closing remarks on what to do next after we talk. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Everybody can hear me? Well, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, thank you. My experience actually has been same like Marlene's that she mentioned at workplace. But I would just introduce myself as I'm from India, basically. And India itself is a country, multicultural, country that has people from different backgrounds. It's just, who follow different religions and different beliefs, right? So, and also in my family, my brother-in-law is an African American person, and both of their beautiful children are also African American. So I come from a blended family that has experienced, people in our family from different backgrounds and cultures. In the first 3 years when we came to Canada, I did not experience so much racism and discrimination in Toronto because Toronto itself is a multicultural place. You'll see people from different backgrounds there. So it was nothing new. It's nothing new for those people to see people of color there. But when I came to the Sioux in 2007 with my husband, when he got his, when he started working with Algoma Steel, after that, when I started applying for jobs, it was very, very difficult for me to, get into my field of job. And also I just faced so many problems. Like, I don't think people were even used to seeing a brown person in this city. There was only like 2 or 3 families at that time. So it was really, really hard. And I used to be like, and I used to feel like, what exactly is this? What is it? Despite my qualifications, despite my higher education, and I'm a hardworking person, what's going on here? Finally, slowly and steadily, I found work eventually, but from my experience, same like Marlene mentioned in her experience, it has been the same at my workplace, that I don't know what it is, but you being a person of color you are not allowed to move up. You are not allowed to go at a certain level where you want to be. And I had a person who was literally bullying me, undermining me at work. And then I complained to the HR. After a month, I received a response saying there were no witnesses. So it literally costed me my job. And I'm sorry, guys. But what I'm trying to say here is that when you are hardworking, you have not been reprimanded for anything. You give your 100% in what you do. What could be the reason? What else can be the reason that you are not promoted to? And this has been happening in workplaces very often, and I do hear people of color go through this experience. And it's heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking in this 21st century that educated people who have degrees, who have higher education, are going through this in a country where they immigrate, and they're told when the immigration papers are signed and everything that Canada needs educated people. And you have to come here and experience this. It is shameful. It's shameful. I believe, and my heart goes out. My heart goes out when all these things happen in our community, in such a small city where the population is just like 75,000 here. It just, people don't say it in your face, but when it keeps happening year after year, after day, after day, after day, what is it? My question is, what is it? Nobody would come and say in your face, you know, you're brown, you're black. When I complained to the HR, they told me, what grounds of discrimination? I said, this person would not come and tell me that you're brown. I don't want you in this position. Sorry, that's all.
That's okay.
Thank you so much for letting me speak. And I still have sleepless nights because of those experiences, but my daughter was here yesterday in town and she said to me, Mom, I know you can't forget what you experienced, but become an advocate. Advocate for all people of color. And that's what I'm going to be now. Be an advocate. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jaswinder. And unfortunately, the onus is usually left on us to, on the oppressed, to stand up and to fight and to raise their voices. But we have to take the fight if no one else will. So thank you for sharing. And unfortunately, you're not alone in any of this, in this microaggression and explicit racism. Yeah. I see Curtis's hand is up. I think he was moved to say something. So Curtis, I'm gonna give you 60 seconds because we've already had an opportunity to speak.
I'm just,
and then we'll see who next. Go for it.
I just want thanks for getting me back in. I know I apologize for coming back up. Right?
Okay. It's okay.
I've been moved by what everyone has said, but we need to start from somewhere. For me, I grew up in Africa and moved to Ireland. I have seen all this happen. I can manage some of it, but please, let's leave our children out of it. They were born here. They know this as home. The confusion that I see every day for people of color, and multiracial kids, the parents asking questions on how they're going to have this discussion with their children. Huge. The impact is unimaginable. Please, if that's where we need to start from, let us help our kids. Let's leave them out of this, because they know no other country but here as home. I can take it. I'm happy to respond handsomely sometimes, but they don't know anywhere else. So that's my take-home message. Let us start from somewhere. And if we need to start from somewhere at all, I haven't had this discussion, it's our children. They need all of us. And that's my biggest worry. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. Thank you for sharing this. I want to call on my brother Gabriel I want to hear from Gabriel. Arab, are you here? And I know that Ten is with you, so I would love to hear from you guys. Go ahead.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you very much for this. And thank you everyone that's been here. I've been listening in. And I come today with, a lot has been said. As I try to ignore some of my personal experiences, especially to my daughter, and how she transited when she was only 5 years old from Nigeria to here. I hear her pain because back in Nigeria, she felt very independent and she was the queen of her own crib. But the very first week in school, going to school, even right here in Ontario, actually, was in Hamilton, and it was the most moving experience for me because maybe the kids didn't know, or maybe the teacher didn't support it, but every time there was a fight or a situation that went out of hand, the teacher, did not do anything to help the situation and would write me notes. And even when I went to visit, it was obvious that there was something about my kid and she did not understand for my kid. She almost developed a phobia to live in this country. I had to work extra hard to make her, feel settled. That look, there are other types of people in the world. Yes, the pigment of our skins might be different, but people who judge you by the color of your skin, are myopic. There's no other way to say it. They have not been taught. And I would like to revert to what Nelson Mandela said, that no one is born hating another person because of the color of their skin or his background or his religion, because people must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, then they can also be taught to love, because love comes more naturally to us. If the tip of my finger hurts, because we're a minority, Black people, minority, but if the tip of my finger hurts, my whole body still hurts. I cannot claim to have wellness if really one of my legs is cut off. I have to manage that. It's still part of the whole body. Humanity is not supposed to be, reveling or taking pride in, oh, look at me, the color of my skin is better than yours. Therefore, I deserve certain privileges that you don't. The truth is, the education must not only be in the homes of Black families or in forums where Black people come together, converge. It's gotta be that every other human being out there needs to tell the human being that they're overseeing that, look, every life matters, because Black people are hurting. Aboriginal people are hurting. Indigenous people are hurting. You know, like everyone hurts as long as we put them under, just because we have certain privileges and we think, yes, they should be treated certain ways or certain privileges to be, taken away from them. This is the voice of not just Black people, but everybody, because we hurt. The pain that I feel today should not just be my pain. It should be the pain of my friend at work. It should be the pain of everybody who's got a voice, because if my leg hurts, my body hurts. I do not have to wait for my body to take its last breath before I gasp for breath. We have to understand that if it starts from the tip of your toe, someday it'll get to the heart, and that heart might take its last breath. As a community, we're made up of diversity. If we must stay alive, then every part matters. Every life matters. Right now, yes, I couldn't sleep last night and a few other nights like that, because I cannot imagine that the life of a man could actually be taken just because he's Black. Every white person that heard us spoken about George Flyod did say, that can never happen to me. It rarely happens to people that are not Black. And that's why Black life matters. Every life matters, yes, but we're saying Black life matters because the Black people are going through this deplorable situations like this. The life is almost as though it's nothing. But the voice that needs to be heard, I believe, is not just in the Black community. It's everybody that's got a voice, because we're all human. If our community is Sault Ste. Marie, will continue to thrive and be that beautiful city we love, everybody must stand against racism. And Black lives have to matter. Indigenous people's life have to matter. White people's life have to matter. But case in point right now, it is hard. It is hard to be a Black man right now or a person of color and not hurt. It hurts. That a young teenager who is afraid of the police because of all the things he's heard starts to run, but the policeman decides to gun him down just because he was running away. He does not even have a gun. We see situations where is your driver's license? Oh, it's right here. He reaches for his driver's license and is shot 3 times without even reaching for a gun. Like, I'm reaching for it. I'm reaching for it. 3 shots saying, I'm reaching for my driver's license. You asked for my driver's license. It hurts when you see a man laying on the floor, handcuffed with his hands behind him, and you find 3 grown men with their weight on him, on his vitals. I love all people, but it is hard to not feel Black. It is hard to not feel Black. Because that only happens to a Black man. He might have done something wrong, but he didn't need to pay with his life. It is too precious. I think some of the messages that we should be, and conversations we should be having in our homes, is that every life matters. So if we teach our children that life matters, maybe when they become police officers, they won't take the life of a Black man on the street. Because life is precious, you cannot buy it. A man can repent of his sins and can pay fines, but you cannot give him his life back. I think every Black person deserves the jury's, verdict to be convicted, not rather than being judged right there on the street and lay down their lives. I think these are education. This is the learnings that our children and every one of us need to know. So if you have a voice, not even if you have a position, you have a voice, let it be heard. This is the education that our community needs to learn. We have to speak and stand and do everything possible responsibly against, racism. So I want my friends to join me. I love our community, but we almost speak the same language. Black lives do matter too.
Thank you, Gabriel. Tenny, I know I promised you to speak after Gabriel, but I want you to be the very last thing that we do. Is that okay with you? Okay, thank you. And I'll call on you. I'll call you back. I just want to, out of respect for everybody's time, I know we have this meeting from 1 to 3, but we have 5 minutes left. And there are a few people here that I would like to let them speak. So if you have commitment for something that's at 3 o'clock or you need to leave, there will not be any hard feelings. Please do leave. And I will ask people to just be patient with us, that we might go just a little beyond 3 o'clock. And I promise I will keep the time. So I'll do my best to keep it to 3 o'clock, but I feel like we're gonna go over, and I just ask everybody's permission to be patient. If you have to go, please do. I would like to call on Steve Arab, I see you, but I would like to call on Greg Fergus to share thoughts with us for 2 minutes, and then I will give it to Steve. Go ahead, Greg.
Well, thank you, Ramaz, and thank you all for sharing your stories. I was emailing Terry just a second ago saying that this might be the 20th community gathering that I've been a part of from all across the country, and the trauma is the same. We are all in great pain. I've been gone from tears to almost despondency because of the messages that those videos and those acts have meant for us. It really said that we don't matter. When you see that, especially the Floyd video, it's really, that was his message, is that we're not fully human. But that's not the message that we got to get from this. All these videos have brought up have remind us, each and every one of us, of the humiliating sting of racism, of the systemic discrimination that exists, and we got to. The only good that can come out of this is that I find that for the first time I feel that non-blacks have really heard this and have felt like they've seen this and they can't see it, and they saw it for what it is. And when you see all the demonstrations which have been happening across the country, around the world, but across this country, it's amazing to see the makeup of the community. It's not just Black people we're not just the only ones who are fighting for our lives. There are so many other people who have joined us, which gives me hope. But we have to make sure that we see this through. And that's going to require us to if you have a tongue, speak. If you have hands, write. If you have feet, march. If you don't have feet and you're in a chair, roll. And try to get as many people to do that, because sometimes for some of us who've been working on this file for a long period of time, our tires are flat, our feet are tired, our hands are cramped, and our tongue and voices are hoarse. So we need you to please be there and to help us get this over the edge, so that we could finally make sure that we create a country that is using all of its talents, and people could be fully who they each and everybody wants to be. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to listen, to share, to shake my head, to wag my fist. I just really appreciate what you guys have shared, and thank you very much. I'm really humbled by the experience.
Thank you, Greg. Steve Araba, the floor is yours.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. It's been a very good, humbling meeting that we're having right now. And, you know, the narrative about the entire thing about all Black Lives Matter is, I think, to a lot of people who are not Blacks, it sometimes signifies, when we say Black Lives Matter, it just means please don't kill us. But the truth is, it's much more than that. It's more about, you know, the same words that Floyd spoke before he died. I can't breathe. You know, we're looking at, if we're qualified to get a job, then we should be able to get it. But right now, it's almost like we can't breathe professionally, socially, culturally. You know, everything else that you have to do, you have to do it. You have to go an extra mile before you can achieve anything. It's almost like having a building, and you want to get in the building. The average white person already has the keys in his pocket, but the Black person figuratively has to find a way to pick the locks of the door, maybe by having extra degrees, having extra experience, having extra exposure to something that the average white person may not have. And so eventually, at the end of all of this, what we're saying is, being Black is not supposed to be something that should naturally relegate a group of people to a lower way of life. It is something that we should embrace as just a difference in uniqueness, just the same way a lot of people embrace, I mean, a lot more Black people embrace the other cultures, other races, and that is what we're looking at. And it's not just so much that we can come up on platforms like this and have a conversation and then cry about somebody else that died, and then, you know, everybody else sheds a tear about something, and then we'll come up with another Martin Luther King speech. It is about something being done, and that's the most important thing. Otherwise, a campaign is just another publicity thing if nothing is going to be done. And that's why, you know, I'm glad that we have the people that matter on board having this conversation with us. And we really do hope that something happens in this regard. And especially when we're looking at the city of Sault Ste. Marie, the city of Sault Ste. Marie needs a lot more other people that will bring a lot more juice to this city with the vast potentials that it has. And so if we don't feel safe, then we're going to go to someplace safer, even though nowhere else is really that safe. We just pick a safer place. And it's important that we can settle here, we can have our children here, raise our families here, and know that we don't have to keep checking up on them because they're going to be safe. And that's all we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. It's 3:03 now, or 3:04. I just want to say, I heard a lot, and we all heard a lot. And I think the underlying message or takeaway is, what can we do next? And where do we go from here as a community, as Black people, as those in places of affluence and authority? And unfortunately, we don't have the time to go into it. And my plan was to actually carve out some time to talk about the next steps. But I think we're still reeling, and we're still needing to heal, and still need our voices and our stories to first be heard, so it informs the next steps. And I'm sure I'm making an executive decision right now. This is not going to be our last ACCANO reflection, because we need more time. So I just want to let everybody know that we will have another opportunity to come together and reflect on the next steps as we did today. Jane, if you want to close us out, I'll give you 60 seconds to close us out, and then right after, I'm not going to come on the mic. Tenny is going to take it from here. So 60 for Jane, and Tenny, I think it's probably with 90 seconds. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We can't hear you. Jane, can you unmute yourself? I'm trying to find you here to unmute you, actually. Oh, I found you. I'll unmute you. Go ahead.
Thank you for unmuting me. I couldn't find my cursor. I'm Black. I feel Black. And I'll always be Black. Tears have flowed very freely this afternoon. My emotions have come out raw. I hope those tears will not go unanswered. I hope the raw emotions will not just fade away. I hope this will not be yet another moment for us to go back to our wounds again, because this is not the first conversation we have had about racism. Our leaders are here, and we are looking at you. You wield the power, and you have the power, and you can make the changes. Our friends are here, our allies are here. Our places of worship, I know some leaders are here today. If our places of worship remain silent and do nothing, if our leaders remain silent and do nothing, if the community remains silent and do nothing, if my neighbor remains silent and does nothing, it means you love the status quo. Please hear our cry. Take a moment and ask yourself, with the leadership role that I have, what can I do to bring the change that I want to see? I want to wind up by reading to you a quote from Martin Luther King. We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Thank you for coming today, and God bless you.
Thank you, Jane. Tenny, please take it away.
I have lived in the darkness for so long. I'm waiting for the light to shine. Far beyond horizons I have seen, beyond the things I've been, beyond the dreams I've dreamed, are the things I've done. In fact, each and every one are the way that I was taught to run. I am waiting for the light to shine. I am waiting for the light to shine. I have lived in the darkness for so long. I'm waiting for the light to shine. I am waiting for the light to shine. I am waiting for the light to shine. I have lived in the darkness for so long. I am waiting for the light to shine. Ooh. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye. Thank you for being here.
I think this is thank you and this is goodbye. And watch out for an email. We will follow up, and we need to continue the conversation so we can get to real change. Thank you everyone for coming, and thank you for listening. Thank you for everyone who was able to be vulnerable and articulate their feelings and their thoughts. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Salut.
Thanks, everyone.
Miigwech.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, everyone. Thanks.
Mm.